If they're all used, you know, if they're not used. Right.
Well, not sure where.
Okay, how are you?
Good. Okay.
Does it stay open?
Go ahead, yeah. Yeah, it does.
You're in the wrong place.
I think that.
Go back to the lake. Oh, you're observing good government. Well, I'm his lawyer too, so I'm gonna get fired. That's okay. Macy doesn't have anything to do anyways. Okay, this goes to Mr. Eck.
Are there many here?
And we don't have one of these guys. So why we receive
Agnes is here for the Rosno.
Oh, yeah.
Boo has to sit and Tom's over there.
I looked.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to call the Common Council meeting for Tuesday, February 5th to order. Has it been appropriately noticed?
Yes, Your Honor, it has.
Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Here.
Alderman Zwart.
Here.
Alderman Stray.
I'm here.
Alderman Kavieski.
Here.
Alderman Miller. Alderman Rozak.
Here.
Alderman Shaw.
Here.
We need approval for the meeting minutes from December 18th, 2018. Need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes passed. Next item is comments and suggestions from citizens. Anybody that wants to discuss any subject, please fill out one of the blue cards. I'll call them in random order. They're up here by the podium. Andy Koch.
Hello, can you, good? Yeah, so I'm here I'm a resident at 1415 Mockingbird Court for the Rosno Creek Trail. I just wanted to say I was strongly in favor of the trail. I've attended the public information meeting and actually gave some design feedback to John as well. So I've been involved quite heavily with it. And just my point is, I really feel strongly about the trail and that Oconomowoc needs more paved trails like this so residents can safely enjoy the nature of Oconomowoc. And I think it's a really valuable asset to make it accessible to everybody. And I ask that the council consider approving the budget amendment, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just bring it up. I'll call you right away. Bob Perkins?
Thank you. I am Bob Perkins. I live at 618 Wilson Street, and I am the chairperson of Oconomowoc Walk and Bike. We're a committee of Greener Oconomowoc, the folks who help to bring you the Winter Farmers Market and promote sustainable lifestyles here in the city. I'd like to endorse what the previous gentleman said concerning the Rosno Creek project. Bicycle trails are a very important part in our community. And many of the folks that I talk to who are cyclists around here really like the trails because they are somewhat inhibited being out on the streets in traffic. This is particularly true of some older cyclists who have come back into it for fitness purposes a little bit later in life. We would really like to see whatever difficulties stand in the way of approving this be rectified and that it be approved as quickly as possible. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lynn Stowe?
installed 212 Pine Street in Oconomowoc. And good evening, everyone. I just have 2 questions to ask. The first question is, will there be a technology committee established for our city? A technology committee, the purpose and priority of guiding our city into the future with technology that is safe for human beings, will preserve our environment, and has an infrastructure which will transmit data in a secure way and will ensure the privacy of data of the residents and the people who do business here. And then my second question is about the cell towers and antenna ordinance that was passed in December. And so I was reading I have a couple of questions, just really one specific question. According to the section 17.109, the industrial use specific standards part of it, it says that once a tower and a cell antenna application has been approved, so it's been approved, the structure is put in place and the cell antenna is on, that I understand that there can be up to 3 additional cell antennas placed on that same tower structure, and that the zoning administrator is the one that approves the additional cell antennas without having to go through any application process or public notification. So having come from the meeting over there, I don't know if it's a state law that says that that's okay, but my question is, will the zoning administrator have this same authority to approve 3 additional cell antennas on tower structures in our residential zones without reporting this activity to the members of the city council or the residents before it actually happens? So thank you for your responses in advance.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anybody else has a comment they'd like to bring up? Seeing none, we will move on to regular business. The first item is the consent agenda. Tonight we have several items. First is licenses, second is budget amendments, an ordinance to repeal and recreate section 125 of the municipal code relating to municipal court and the judge. That has to do with the municipal court taking on new clients. Release and recorded water utility easement and another water utility easement. So we need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on any of the items? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Zwart?
Aye.
Alderman Stray?
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski?
Aye.
Alderman Miller?
Aye.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Shaw?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to committee reports. Finance Committee. First item is consider acting on a resolution awarding architectural consultant contract for review of the Waterview condominium project. We need a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Jason, you want to give a little history on this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. January 9th, the Architectural Commission members met to discuss a development proposal that the city received called the Waterview condominiums. The Architectural Commission has an item in the zoning ordinance that says, where necessary, the Architectural Commission may seek the opinion of experts to determine if the project conforms with the standards listed in the zoning ordinance. They chose to take up on that offer and ask that they get some expert help from outside the city to review this and do a deep dive on the project to determine if it conforms with the standards that are listed for developing within the Isthmus area. They asked staff to go out and find a firm. I did put together a scope of services. I talked to the Wisconsin Historic Society. They gave me some names. I did some research of firms. I came up with a list of 24 different firms. I created this scope. I sent it out to all the firms that the state Wisconsin Historical Society provided. I also sent it to other firms as well that I thought would be capable of doing this research on this project. 4 firms ended up submitting a response. I am recommending that we go with a firm out of Madison, Wisconsin. They have no relationship with the applicant or the application. They are called Isthmus Architecture Incorporated. They've been around for over 20 years. They've won numerous awards on their website. They do historical review as their expertise. I think they would do a fine job on presenting this, and they would give a good opinion on if this development conforms with the standards listed in the ordinance.
Thank you, Jason. Let's open it up for questions. Matt?
Yeah, so our ordinance says that we can seek guidance, but I'm curious, who actually votes? Does this person we're hiring vote yet? Who actually makes the decision?
No, I believe the role of this person would be to do a review, and if it conforms with the standards, and if it does not conform, they would give opinions on how they could make it conform to our standards, and give specific reasons why it does not.
I think Stan wants to give an opinion here.
Well, no, this individual would simply be retained as a consultant to aid the ultimate decision. What meets the standards. The ordinance doesn't give a lot of details. Dirty, then it meets the standards, and it's also got to be kind of consistent with stuff in the neighborhood. So
After this guy's
after
done,
this, yeah, it's a male.
there's another
Yes,
one.
then there will be a hearing. And this individual will testify, and the applicant will testify. Of course, the applicant will testify first, and anyone that's in opposition will testify, and this individual will testify, and that hearing examiner, I believe we will be hiring a hearing examiner that will take it all in, do findings of fact, conclusions of law, and determination that would then be appealable to the Plan Commission.
So at this point, our architectural board that was appointed is completely,
They have, each and every one of them recuse themselves.
okay. And Jason, then, you interviewed this gentleman, Mr. Peter Roth from Isthmus?
Be a phone call, yes.
Okay, and you feel he's qualified and he's gonna do a good job for consulting for the Architectural Commission or the city?
I do.
And that company also was the lowest bid as well, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
That's all I have, thanks.
Evan, you had a question?
What if their opinion comes back and it's not substantial? In other words, they're saying, well, at the end of the day, they're complying to the law, but then maybe they're not complying to the law. Where do we go from there?
Want to answer that, Stan?
Well, yeah, the hearing examiner will make that determination. This will be more information for that hearing examiner to take into account. If the applicant isn't happy with the determination of the hearing examiner, then it could be appealed to the Plan Commission. If the applicant isn't happy with the determination of the Plan Commission, the applicant can appeal to the Circuit Court. If he's not happy with the Circuit Court determination, he can go to the Court of Appeals. Not happy with the Court of Appeals, he can make an application to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and if they take it and he's not happy with that, he can go to the United States Supreme Court.
That's a lot of cert for,
Right.
a lot of certiorari
Yeah,
decisions.
yep.
And if it is approved, then it can go the other way. The group that's against it could do the same thing,
Maybe.
possibly.
I'm not gonna comment on whether they have standing or not, because
Possibly,
I haven't
okay.
looked into it.
Sorry, possibly. Derek,
From what I just heard, that won't come in front of us, though.
Right.
just as a plan
Just as a,
commission,
it won't, for a condo plat, it might, though, I think, but that would be it,
that's a
right?
possibility for that.
But that
part
would
of
be it. It would, the approval of the project would just go to Plan Commission.
Plan commission.
Yeah, it's allowable under the zoning code.
It would go to the plan commission either way. Either for appeal or for, whatever we have to approve. Go ahead, Lou.
It states in here that they anticipate 24 hours approximately of time associated with the evaluation. Is there any, the 2 months? I thought it was
Can I speak to
compensation,
that?
24 hours at $130 an hour.
That's correct, yeah.
Can I speak to that?
The city attorney.
I recommended, and I didn't do this in front of the committee, and I apologize, that particular provision in the contract be amended to, before they sign it, that to be consistent with your resolution that says you will do the job, you'll do the whole job, and you will do it not to exceed the $3,100 some odd dollars. And Jason's going to go back to them with that And it's gotta be understood that our resolution only gets them that amount of money, and they're gonna have to pledge to do it, whether it takes 100 hours or 400 hours or 10 hours.
Okay, so that's
Flat fee.
one of the questions associated with that. The other question is there a timeline associated with completion then? Are we anticipating that upon award that this could be resolved or researched and prepared by them by the end of March, or is it April? I mean, I'd like to be able to.
Date in April or something?
Go first.
I just think it's fair to all that are involved that there's some timeline associated with that, so it's not hanging out there potentially longer than need be.
Yeah, I didn't get the feeling that there was any problem. I mean, 24 hours is of work. It shouldn't drag out too far into the future. I think the thing that's going to hold us back is there's notice requirements. We're going to have a public hearing. Plus, we have to hire an independent reviewer. So that's going to take some time as well. So I'm pretty confident this work can be done in a timely fashion.
Is part of their review scale of the development? That was one of the concerns that I heard during the architectural.
Well, they're going to be looking at the standards written in the ordinance, and scale and massing is right in the ordinance as some of the components. So they're going to say if it complies with those standards, and then they're going to give precise reasons if the project does not comply, and then they're going to provide examples and images of recommendations to make it comply. So I think, you know, they're going to be looking at scale, massing.
The other question I have in regards to that review is through the documents that came forward as part of that process. There was a DNR letter from 2015 associated with the earthen dam and a recommendation that was associated with that.
That's not part of this. That's not part of this.
It's not part of this.
No, because he's just looking at the architecture of the building.
Right. So there's
that's
no.
got nothing to do with the dam.
Is there any way to incorporate any of that to
Not that an architect is gonna do.
No, the ordinance deals with the architectural board's involvement in the zoning process. It doesn't have anything to do with dams.
where would that be addressed in the process?
The DNR.
So if there was so again,
This has got nothing to do with that. I mean,
Okay.
if there's some environmental problem or there's some chapter, it's 410 dams? I don't remember, in the administrative code, then that's where that's dealt with. It's my understanding, while this is off topic, the staff is very aware of the whole dam situation. They've been out there with the DNR, and the DNR has signed off on this. That's my understanding.
Okay.
Any other comments? I had one question. I know we had talked about this. Is the applicant still pursuing this?
I've had contact with the applicant and told him that we only want to review this one time.
Right.
That you know, he can't. We can't send this off and then he goes and tweaks the plan and then gives us a new plan. So we're going to have in writing before we sign this contract a plan that the applicant says will not change the plan, and that he certainly intends on going forward, but you know, he's aware that we do not want him to change the plan. So he's going to have to give that some thought and give us the final plan, and we need that in writing before we'll sign
The only
it.
way he would change the plan is if the reviewer says this has to be changed.
Right, at that point, then he would
change
he
it.
would
Okay.
change it, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, we do have a motion and a second,
Yes.
correct? We have a motion and a second on the floor to hire this firm, Isthmus, what's it called?
Architecture
Isthmus
Incorporated.
Architecture, to review the Waterview condominium project. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Ellis,
No.
Alderman Spiegelberg,
Aye.
Alderman Swart,
Aye.
Alderman Stray,
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski,
Aye.
Alderman Miller,
Aye.
Alderman Rozak,
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye. Okay, next item, protection and welfare. Consider act on a resolution granting a new 2019 Class B intoxicating liquor fermented malt beverage license to Bertrand's LLC. We need a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Diane?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have an application from Bertrand's LLC for their new business that they are going to open. It's Bertrand's Lego Subella Restaurant, and that is at 126 West Wisconsin inside the Eagles Landing condominium building. It's on the first floor. They had asked to have the license granted now because they had anticipated opening, have a soft opening this week, February 8th. I spoke to the owner, and those plans have changed. Now they're looking at the end of February. So as we have done in the past with our liquor licenses, we have approved them conditioned upon that the owner confirms the opening date, and then at that time, I would be able to issue the license. And if they do not have it back by a specific time, then they would have to come back to council for reapproval. So my memo had indicated March 15th, but after talking to the owner today and with the new opening dates, we are looking at extending that and making it April 1st. So that's all I have.
The committee did recommend that at committee level.
Yes, they did, for April 1st.
Is that part of this motion, that condition?
Yes.
Yes. So do we have a motion? No.
No, we do not.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved?
I thought we
Second.
did. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We did. But
I didn't know if that condition was in there.
Yeah.
I didn't
Presented
hear it.
by
I
the
apologize.
Finance
I didn't
Committee.
get that down.
Or as
So-
presented by Protection and Welfare.
Yeah.
Okay. Got
Any
it.
questions? No comments? So we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski. Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business. First item is consider act on a resolution awarding contract for Rosenau Creek Trail Project. We need a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Okay, just to let everybody know too, this is a budget amendment, so this vote would need to be a 2/3 majority, which would be 6 votes in favor. So, just so everybody's aware, we went through this before. I think John's just gonna give an updated presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, Common Council, thank you for bringing this topic back to the floor. I want to give an overview of the history of how we got to where we are today. We've had some very good dialogue at the council meeting when it first came forward. We had a committee, a whole meeting that had some great input and dialogue as well from our elected officials, and ultimately we're back here today. So, with that being said, the bike and pedestrian plan and a needs assessment are two tools that we utilize to assist our planning and guidance for trail implementation. The bike and pedestrian plan was adopted back in 2002, and this particular trail area, the Rosenau Creek Trail, is part of that is part of the plan. The goal is to implement trails into the long-term financial plan, which ultimately is adopted by the Common Council on an annual basis when we do have property that's been acquired, dedicated, or available for us to move forward with any bike and ped trail project. The needs assessment was done back in 2018, and the purpose of this survey to our residents was to gather information from our residents to assist staff and our elected officials in prioritizing projects over the next 5 years. The survey was mailed out to 1,118 individuals. We received 401 responses, and as you can see by the chart on the right, nature walking trails and paved bike trails were the highest priority, and high and medium priorities at 89% and 85% respectively, which really fits what the bike and ped plan's about, is creating community connectivity throughout the city. So for reference purposes today, I wanted to put a map up of the trail so everybody was familiar with what area we're referring to. So, turn that on. So the northern portion of this trail, this is Wood Creek Park. This is Highway Z on the north end. This is a middle section that we received an easement for to expand, and I would refer to this as the southern portion of the trail. And then this is Lisbon Road on the bottom. So this is the Roseno Creek corridor. We have connectivity from Lisbon Road, potentially all the way up to Highway Z. And as I'll show you on the next map, we have a larger connectivity thought process on how this project fits in. So the map that you have in front of you now, the orange lines really are identifying City of Oconomowoc property lines, or our boundaries, for lack of a better term. The pink lines, or the blue line that you see running through the center area here, is representing where the Roseno Creek area is, just to give you a reference. The project we're referring to is in this lower right-hand corner. So this is the Wood Creek Park, and this is the corridor that I showed you on the previous map. So any solid line that you see, right here, for example, and we have some pathways up here as well, some sidewalks and connectivity here, are existing pathways and or sidewalks that are used for walking, biking, pedestrian use. All the dotted lines, Roseno Creek Trail, along Lisbon Road, potential connection here. We have a trail that could go to the north, connect to the St. Matt's Northeast Regional Park, connectivity around there, and ultimately head north to Highway K. So as you can see, you look at the northeast section of the city, and this is one segment of the overall plan. All of these other areas that have been identified are potential projects. We may have property at this time. We may need to use public right-of-way. We may have to work with developers as projects move forward before we can consider moving forward with any of those. But it's helpful for you to see what the connection piece is to the future. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, any projects coming forward in the future would have to go through the long-term financial plan. So a little background. Back in June 19th of 2018, the council authorized me to move forward with the design and engineering of the Roseno Creek Trail. We held a public information meeting on September 20th. We had a nice turnout from residents. I'll go back one slide. The residents were mailed that all live in this area. Were sent direct mailings. The Homeowners Association, we had great representation from this area at that meeting for good reason. It's a trail that is adjacent to their properties, and they felt it was important to share their input. The interaction was positive. We received some good feedback and suggestions, and a majority of those suggestions were incorporated into the final plans that you're looking to authorize potentially this evening. December 18th, we brought the construction bids to the Common Council, which is the original plan back in December is what we're actually acting on tonight. I know there'll be further discussion on if that's going to be altered or not, but I'm going to review what was in that. So first and foremost, the recommendation was in the amount of $529,576, along with direct purchasing $39,000 of equipment and resources. The reason we do direct purchase on projects like this, park benches, landscaping supplies, trees, signage, is we can get a better price directly purchasing those items versus using a vendor in the middle to go out and solicit it and they put their markup on it. The funding source for this entire project would be through the Park Impact Fee Fund. As you all know, we create or collect impact fees through our development in the city, and that's part of the Park Impact Fee study that was done, identifies projects and funding sources that are available. The Common Council did make an amendment to the motion on December 18th to reduce a small section of the east-west trail. And I'll go back to the map quickly here. Just the area that they were referring to on that particular evening was really in here, going back to the edge of the boardwalk area. That sound right? I think Derek made that motion. Does it sound accurate? Okay, good. We did some research on that after the motion was made. I didn't have figures at that time, but that particular section was approximately $33,000 of the project. That budget amendment was approved, and ultimately we went forward with the overall project with that amendment. The project, as the mayor identified earlier, required a 6-2 vote. And the reason that we needed that was we needed a budget amendment to authorize the funding through the Park Impact Fee Fund. Council took the action. Final vote was 5-3, therefore it failed. So ultimately we came back on January 18th. Committee of the whole meeting had good discussion, evaluated several options, which included postponing the project for the future. authorizing the project as proposed or potentially amended, and then the potential of removing various sections of the project to get it back within the budgeting scope that we originally talked about. At the end of the meeting, the result really was bring it back as originally proposed for discussion this evening, which is where we're at today. So, as you can see on the slide, we received 7 bids. The low bid was Yankee General Contractors in the amount of $529,567,000. And you can see the wide range of pricing that we received on this project. They are still the low bid, and their bids are still valid at this time. As part of the project, we recommended the direct purchase. This talks a little bit more about what those dollar amounts were based on this full scope of the project. Trailhead, identification signage, trash cans, bike racks, benches, trees, native plantings, landscaping throughout the project. It was in a total amount of $39,000. As I also mentioned at the last meeting, in this particular RFP, we required the engineer to draft an inspection services plan. That plan was to identify, based on how the trail alignment ultimately ended up, what type of inspection needs to occur in this project. Okay? The plan at the full project is approximately 515 hours. Billable rate, if you used $120 an hour, would be about $61,000 to $62,000 of inspection services for this project to be completed. That was not part of the original engineering and design. So this is separated, and it was done so specifically that we didn't know exactly what the trail alignment was going to be until we worked ourselves through the project. If the project is approved in any fashion this evening, full project, a portion of the project, whatever you determine to do, we would do an RFP, send that out for those inspection services. That would come back to the Common Council for approval. We would try to do that as quickly as possible within reason, so we have an inspector selected for the project before construction begins. So, a little more background related to the budget amendment. The long-term financial plan several years ago utilized Park Impact Fee Fund, which included about $695,000 for the construction of Rosno Creek Trail and the expansion of Wood Creek Park. Both of those components are identified where this trail alignment has laid out. To break it down further, the trail portion was $300,000 and the Wood Creek expansion amount was $395,000. In 2018, the long-term financial plan authorized staff to proceed with engineering and design for the Wood Creek Park expansion. That was part of the budgeting process. That amount was part of the budget. But the construction component was not part of the budget. It was removed by the Common Council during the long-term financial plan process. And the logic behind it was sound. The removal was strictly because the planning was going to take place in 2018. Construction was not going to occur in 2018, so we chose to pull it from 2018 and move it back. That's where the glitch occurred. The way that the language was written into the minutes and the motion is typically when something's bumped back, it's immediately bumped back. There was a breakdown in communication between myself and our finance department to make sure that that was in the long-term financial plan, and it got omitted by error. That's the reality of it. But there was action to remove it and move it back to 2019 because we were designing it with the plan to move forward in 2019. So because of that, the money's not budgeted and the budget amendment is required. So if we are to move forward with the project as it was bid, we would require a budget amendment in the amount of $268,576 using the Park Impact Fee Fund for this project to be approved as proposed. So here we are tonight. We're recommending the motion as we did the previous meeting with the $529,567 and the direct purchases of $39,000 using the Park Impact Fee Fund. And there's a diagram of the project for reference purposes. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you for discussion.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Let's open it up for discussion. Kevin?
So we're gonna get this money from the park impact fees?
That is correct.
And we now have available to us 225,000?
Approximately.
What does approximately mean?
I don't really have the number off the top of my head. I have to look for it. Lori, do you have that number handy? I don't have, I didn't bring it in my packet of notes, but you have the ability to take a look for it? I'll get that for you. It is not the full amount, if that's where you're going. It's not the full 500,000+.
I understand that, but I'd like to know. I would. Also, the length of this, how long is this whole trail? What's the length of it?
The length from the lower section on Lisbon Road up to here has always been just about a half a mile, and this extension makes it a hair longer, maybe a 0.65, 0.7 total.
So for a half mile of blacktop?
Yeah, the trail has two types of surfaces. We have an asphalt trail, which is 8 foot wide.
Where?
That is a majority of this area, except for this small portion right here. There's a boardwalk piece there.
Right.
We have asphalt section going across here until we hit the Roseno Creek, where we have a culvert replacement. There will be boardwalk there and extending up through the wetlands to that location, asphalt the rest of the way. Here, moving south, it's asphalt all the way to the end until right here. Again, we're in a wetland area, so it's boardwalk from that last section to here. The boardwalk portion, for reference purposes, Alderman Ellis, was bid at $250,000. So it's clearly the most expensive portion of this project.
What was, can you say that again, John? What was,
Sure.
What was the most
The
expensive
boardwalk
portion?
component, you looking for the price, Matt?
No, boardwalk, what you just answered his question.
You want me to go over the whole thing again?
No, just that last answer. What was the most expensive part?
The boardwalk sections are the most expensive portion of the project, and it totals $250,000. And those areas, again, are down here at Lisbon Road, which is the largest section of boardwalk. We have another section in the center here as we cross Roseno Creek. And there's one small section up here, actually right there as well.
So if I hear you right, we've got a $250,000 for the boardwalk.
Yes.
And then another $225,000 for, we have $225,000 plus or minus, whatever, you'll find that out. And
You're referring to the amount in the impact fee fund right now?
right.
Okay.
And we need to come up with a total of $250,000. Is that what I'm hearing? I'm a little
I
confused.
wouldn't say it that way. I'll go back a slide here. What the recommendation or motion could be is the total contract is 500.
So the total contract is $500,000, $500,000.
Yeah, 529,567. Plus the authorization.
Plus the $39,000.
That is correct.
So we're up around, okay, so 550, 560.
About 570.
570, all right.
That's
So
right.
my math was a little off.
Plus inspection services.
Right.
Correct, which is an additional 61 or 62,000 if the full project's done.
For a half mile.
That's accurate.
Karen?
What is the point of the boardwalk area that connects to Lisbon if it's basically the boardwalk to nowhere? And it kind of comes out on Lisbon at a very, very dangerous spot.
Yeah, that's a very good question. The trail, as originally proposed, was to go this full corridor. This particular area, we had a lot of discussion at the public comment or public information meeting with the residents about how do we create a connecting point to Lisbon Road that would be safe. And that's the key word, right? And so the design of that particular area is to slow anyone that may be on a bike or moving object moving south, where they get into a switchback type environment. So you literally have to slow down and almost walk your bike through that before you would enter Lisbon Road. Now, the second phase of that is Lisbon Road, this particular area, if you're not familiar with it, this right here is probably, that is where the hill is. So there can be some challenges with width and hills. If you've ever rode your bike up a hill, you understand the challenges with that. If it's narrow, it can be challenging. So our objective when we designed it was to make sure that ingress and egress was managed in a safe environment. Once an individual chooses to use Lisbon Road or go that route, it would be no different than if they chose to do it, whether the trail was there or not.
Is there a different option to getting to Lisbon Road versus coming down and having to do that expensive boardwalk area that goes into that really unsafe part of Lisbon Road.
Yeah, well, Lisbon Road, the traffic in this entire area it moves probably at or above the speed limit on a consistent basis. So regardless of where you enter in this area, you're probably gonna have a similar challenge. So one of the things you could consider, and this came up at the committee of the whole meeting, is there value in having this portion of the trail if it's taking you to a dangerous intersection? So the discussion was, could this be potentially a mode walking path, for lack of a better term, that maybe doesn't connect all the way to Lisbon Road? It might have a little loop in there and brings you back. And then in this area right here, there's already an existing paved trail that connects these two cul-de-sacs. So an alternate route could be coming here, going into the cul-de-sac, have on-road signage that would bring you up and connect to Lisbon Road in this location. This entire area, we have a pretty large right-of-way area. So a future project, as I showed on the previous map, this could be implemented in the future if we choose to do that. So that would be an alternative route if we chose not to do the southern section at this time.
Lou? Lou is up.
I know, based on the direction that you were given, you were bringing it back as you've presented.
Yep.
However, do you have any information associated with the project if that southern leg were to be removed from this proposal, and what that would do to the cost of the project as it stands now?
I won't have exact information because we're going to have to go back and have a conversation with the low bidder on the overall scope of the project and the change. But and Mr. Riffle, please correct me if I'm wrong here.
Here's where the rub comes in. I was asked whether or not removal of the portions that we looked at removing would invalidate the bids. And I said no, because we did include unit prices, and it was less than like 8% of the 10% of the entire project, right?
Well, that was the original component, which was up here.
Yeah.
Which was about 6%, if I remember correctly.
Right, and that's a question I answered.
Right.
When you get to the point where the project isn't the project anymore, then I would come down with rebid the whole thing. You're done?
Is there a way to negotiate with the low bidder based on the unit pricing to potentially hold in place, even though the scope of the project is significantly changed, if they're willing to hold that low bid unit pricing to implement the portion that would be approved as discussed and reviewed by council, why would it have to go out to bid?
The answer is you can talk to the low bidder about holding prices. The problem is if the scope of the project changes in any substantial form, then you're not being fair to all of the other bidders who might have bid it differently if they had known that this was going to be the project. So that's the problem.
I was under the impression if this is professional services, we can do whatever we want to do.
No, this is a construction contract.
This is construction contract?
Yeah, they're going to be building culverts and paths.
So you think we get in trouble by removing a portion of it and asking the low bidder if they would be willing to honor their contract or maybe some small percentage of an increase to it?
My answer is that it is a substantial change to what was originally bid that would affect the way that a contractor might bid the project differently, then we would stand the possibility of being sued by one of the other contractors.
Okay.
If we're willing to take that risk, that's great. It's fine with me.
I'd like to make a motion to remove that south leg of the project and see what the costs come in at. Because I do like the connectivity to the rest of the area. I think it's important. And I think that south leg could be mowed and could be very enjoyable with some benches and things along the creek for people who don't want to ride their bikes. Because walking trails, I believe, was the #1 thing on your, it wasn't?
Yep.
No,
it was.
Bike trails.
Walking trails was #1, what paved bike trails was #2.
Okay, we have a motion to amend, we have a second.
Second.
We have a second. And now we'll be discussing just the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment, Charlie?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of removing that section. I've always been supportive of doing the complete long-term bike and ped plan I want to see this connectivity going up towards the north. I think that that portion going towards Lisbon Road will be used. I bike Lisbon Road myself quite a few times. It's a tough hill, I got to admit that. I might be willing at times to, as I'm going to go that hill, take the trail and go over to Highway Z just to avoid it. But I personally think that we ought to do the trail, this trail as we bid it, right from the start, and how it's identified in the plan, including with the easement that we got with the developer.
Lou?
I like I understand where you're going with that. If we were to eliminate the south portion of the trail for now, I think there's value in creating that natural mode path in that area, and then having that connectivity to Lisbon on the western side of the hill. It's just my opinion that if you have the entry point off of Lisbon on the downhill side of Lisbon Road, that no matter what you do with that boardwalk to try to mitigate the speed of which that person is going to hit Lisbon Road, it's still dangerous. If you're gonna jump into a blender, it doesn't matter if you jump in at 10 miles an hour or 5 miles an hour, you hit that blender and it's still gonna hurt. So that blind spot that you get on a hill that's as significant as that is on Lisbon, and entering and exiting that path on that side, I don't think is as safe as doing it uphill on the western side of it. I agree that we should have connectivity for those who want to enjoy everything that brings, but we can save some money, we can do it safer, and we can implement the connectivity portions associated from the apartments, cover most of the boardwalk, if not all of the boardwalk, depending upon how that final south leg comes to play. I'd really support moving forward with this, with that south leg removed this year.
I have another, I guess, kind of a rebuttal to your not wanting to go back up the hill. If you went down, you rode Lisbon Road out, you could cut down Prairie Creek and then cut across on the trail right through Prairie Creek on the new trail that connects back up to get back out to Z. And it's only a little bit away from there, and we'll probably save $200,000 to $300,000 on this project. So that section, I think, not only being dangerous, if kids go out to there, I know that you adults can handle that, but if you have connectivity that goes right out.
Not adults.
I'm just saying, you're creating a dangerous situation for young people. And I would rather not create that to the tune of $300,000 when there's alternate ways to get there.
Matt?
Oh, go ahead, Charlie. No, I'll
Defer.
okay.
You had your hand up.
I'll defer to Charlie because you wanted to respond to him, and I'll go next.
Actually, my response is gonna be that if that's the vote is to take out the south end, then I think we ought to rebid this as were recommended by the city attorney, because it's, the scope of the project has changed that much and it ought to be rebid.
I agree with that.
I agree.
So then if I,
Hang on, okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
if that's what we're gonna do, if removing the south leg means we rebid, I'm okay, and I won't talk for 20 minutes about the problems with the whole process.
Do it anyway.
The reason we're struggling here is because when we first voted on this, back in 2018, we were told that this was just the trail. And now we're being told it's the trail in the park, even though we're not getting anything new done to the park. I went back and looked, believe it or not, I kept all my long-term financial plan stuff for the last couple of years, and went back through my files, and we did have this in at one point, the park development for Wood Creek at $440,000. This is not Wood Creek Park development. This is not Wood Creek Park expansion. This is just the trail. And that's why I think we're struggling, because we approved the $300,000 for the trail. When we went out for the engineering and when we approved the engineering in December of last year, what we found out is this is actually going to be closer to like $630,000. And that's a lot of money for a half-mile trail. If we can, I am all in favor of doing this little piece. maybe connecting through to the other parcels here that are being built, and then cutting off that southern leg and letting it rebid. Because then I think we get closer to the number, we get the connectivity. It's still kind of a path to nowhere, but at least it's going somewhere in some spots.
Are you saying cut off the whole south leg? Or just the very end?
Whole south leg.
The whole blue. Yeah, and then maybe that, the little yellow part, you could try to connect back to the next subdivision that's
So the
being
whole
built
blue
there.
part up that's up there
Yeah.
now?
Right.
Okay.
This particular map was set up really to what you're saying, Alderman Rozak. So this is the connectivity piece right here with the existing trail. So it allows you to go east-west, allows you to go the north, and then this would begin the mode portion if we choose to go that direction.
I think that's where the council, to me, seems like it's going. I think we want to do the trail, but I think the expense and the cost has gone a lot higher than what we originally thought when we started talking about this trail back in 2017, when we put it back in the 2018 long-term financial plan. And that's where we're struggling because we're way too high. And so I'm for parts of the project, but not the whole thing.
Mike?
John, would you have a problem taking out the south right now? I mean, obviously, we might have to rebid it and everything, but would you have a problem just taking care of the red and the yellow right now?
Well, I don't have a personal problem with it. I think the reality of it is we were given a task to do engineering design for the full trail. We did it. The pricing came in higher than what we probably anticipated, primarily because of the boardwalk sections. Now we have some good dialogue with the Common Council. We do have some valid comments from our officials this evening. And if we move forward with the north and east and west, I think rebidding would be appropriate. Understanding that I have to work with the engineer to redo the bidding documents, so there'll be some minor costs there to get that done. I don't know what that is off the top of my head because I didn't know what direction we were going to go this evening. But we'd have to rebid the project, and hopefully we'll get responses from a lot of the same companies, and then we'll bring it back. There's no guarantee, as you know, that unit pricing will remain the same. It could change for better or for worse. And then we still may be in the situation where we have to talk about a budget amendment based on what that number is, but that number most likely would be smaller. Mayor, I do have one more comment.
Yep.
Alderman Ellis asked a question related to how much money was currently in the impact fee fund. I have a figure for you. It's $219,000 to date.
Okay.
400,000 short.
If we were to move forward with the removal of the blue section as it currently is represented, and that seems to then trigger a rebid based on the removal of significant portions of the unit cost basis associated with the bid, and with the conversation of a potential alternate south leg that would take advantage of some of the existing paved path and street that would allow that trail to come out on the western side.
To make sure everyone's clear on what he's referring to, north section, east-west section, there's a path that connects here, there's a cul-de-sac in this area. We would then use on-road signage to bring them up through the subdivision to connect to Lisbon Road. That's probably not the best map to look at for that, but that one might be better.
I think that's a great
Here's the
plan.
subdivision area, so we come up here and connect at this part, which is at the top of the hill.
Is there another path that goes between that cul-de-sac and the hill? I thought there was some. Just
A little bit of path in that park.
down here?
No, up to the left, just to the left of there. What's that brown spot, right?
That's wooded area.
Go north and south.
This?
Keep going left. Right there. I
Yes,
think there's a path there.
There's a handful of small connection pieces within this subdivision when it was built.
Okay. I just know that I believe there's another path
No,
that goes.
you're correct.
So there is some more unique connectivity in that area that gets you up the hill.
Right.
And the backside of those, where that darker pink line is that connects the two cul-de-sacs, is that going like through an easement between 2 yards or what?
No, there's an easement between homes in each cul-de-sac. The path currently is there, and then it goes down and
The paved path?
it's paved. That's correct.
So in other words, you're gonna be sending bicycles from all over town through, between two people's houses?
What, 4 months out of the year?
Everyone, I'm just saying because we've had issues like this before with other areas, and now we're promoting to send, you know, bicyclists and walkers and whatever between everybody's houses, so, go ahead, Lou.
The reason I asked that question is because if that southern leg is diverted again, to that western side, and there is some portions of paving that would need to occur associated with that, from a unit cost standpoint, would that then necessarily trigger a rebid? Couldn't we say, you know, we're gonna eliminate the boardwalk on that south, we're gonna eliminate a portion of the paved area?
Here's what the problem is. This is like half the pavement involved here.
Right.
It cuts the time of this project down significantly. You might get a small contractor that would bid this thing because, hey, this is a neat little job for me, and they might have undercut everybody, whereas you never know how it's gonna come out. And so it really is disingenuous. Let's say you're gonna bid a 5-story city hall, and you get all the bids in, and then we only need a 3-story, city hall. You just can't do that.
I understand, and the reason I ask is because I understand there's gonna be a timeline issue associated with this, and if it goes for rebid, the chances of it getting complete this year are probably not necessarily very high, because we want those areas frozen where that boardwalk is gonna occur in the north and east.
Yeah, I don't know.
So if we could proceed without having that rebid and save that time, then am I correct in that, John? If we go to rebid, the chances of that happening in 2019 are slim?
Not necessarily. It really comes down to how fast we can turn it around and get it out and get a response back.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times the boardwalk sections, which there are some in the north and the east-west components, are typically built in winter months. And the reason they do that is there's less disturbance to the wetland areas. So the winter is the winter. We're going to be outside of that shortly, hopefully.
One day.
So we can start the pavement section in the fall and then do the last boardwalk sections in the winter if the timing's right. We just need to get organized and get the information out and bring it back. But it'll take a month and a half at least, maybe more, to get that information back to you. Because you got to give them an opportunity to respond and review it and have questions and so forth. One of the things that I think we need to be aware of is right now in the connection points here, there are some slope areas. And what we would need to verify if this is going to be the main route coming through here versus just connecting to the flat area is the ADA accessibility requirements we have when we build pathways. So that would be something we'd have to evaluate if we're going to change the scope, because technically this was the ADA accessible connection piece originally, and now we have an area here that we may have a challenge with. So that would have to be evaluated and obviously be part of the bidding process to make sure we're meeting those requirements. And that's a private path right now. So these homeowners association is aware of the connectivity, but we need to make sure we formalize all of those components if any changes occur.
It's a condo association, homeowners?
No, is it a condo association?
Yeah, isn't that condos there?
No, those are all
That's all
homes.
homes?
The condos are more up by Lisbon
So
Road.
it's not private to the homeowners, is it a public
It's
pathway?
an HOA.
Is it a public pathway, though, that?
Not right
I mean,
now.
that they're not gonna say, you got, 50 bikes on a Saturday morning flying by?
It's public.
It's
Well, then-
private.
Yeah, we'll have to
Then you
verify
have to
that.
post it. You can't trespass.
Yeah.
So we're gonna condemn that land from an HOA.
You can't condemn for a trail anymore, you know that.
Yeah, right, that's right.
So how do you do?
That's true.
I'm confident that the HOA is aware of this. They were involved with the public information meetings. They were supportive of the project. So we just have to work through those steps with them.
Well, I'm sure they were
could there be a-
supportive of it for their own people to get onto
Sure.
it. I don't think they want.
Could there be a
everybody in
challenge?
town.
Yeah, if there is, we'll bring it back and we'll have a discussion about it.
Charlie?
I think we should be awarding the contract for the whole thing as is, or we reject the contract and rebid. I
Mike,
don't think we even vote on the amendment.
I don't think we did.
hang on. Mike?
I agree with Charlie.
Tom?
Thank you. You mentioned before about going through this houses and that Alderman Spielberg brought up a good comment, for 4 months out of the year. This whole project's an awful lot of money for just, to me, this is a part-time, seasonal park. we were talking about the impact fees. I always like to bring that up because that's $219,000 that was basically promised when we spent $2 million to put that other park up all the way to the other end. Now, and Lisbon Road, there's a reason why probably the town gave that half of it up because it's a terrible, terrible, terrible road. I don't get this whole project, be honest with you. You know, the money can be spent on our streets where the other 99.7% people live and use those every day. They're building a trail from the west end of town all the way to Watertown for like $275,000, and that's 14 miles. And we're fooling around with this area up here. Don't get it.
Charlie?
This park impact fee money can't be used for city streets, though,
No,
can
it
it,
can't.
for repair of city
It can
streets?
be used for.
I wasn't saying that, but with that other regional park that we have up there, it's $2 million.
I
We
understand
paid
it,
for
but you did say
Overpaid
you'd
for
rather
it.
use the money for street projects, and it can't
Yeah, we
be
can't
used
use it
for.
for
Okay,
It's gotta
I'll-
It's gotta be used
an
for parks.
identified
I'll
project.
refrain that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's
Gotta
still.
be used for park projects. That's easy.
Let me surprise everyone. I'm going to agree with actually kind of Charlie and Mike. I think we should reject the amendment, and I think then we should reject the project and just send it back to rebid without the south portion. If we take the south portion out and we've got a problem with the bid, then we've got a problem with the bid. So if you guys would be okay, withdraw that motion, we reject it. All we need is 3 people anyway to vote against it, and I think there's going to be 3 people voting against it, and go back and rebid without that south portion. And let's do it right, and let's try to get it a little closer to the numbers we'd originally started talking about. So.
So do you need me to withdraw my motion?
You can withdraw your motion, and whoever made the second, withdraw the second.
Did anybody even second it?
Whoever had the second has to withdraw first. I don't think he's gonna withdraw it. So we have the amendment.
Okay.
We'll vote on the amendment first. Am I right on this?
So hold on.
Repeat that. Can you repeat the whole amendment again?
The amendment was to remove the south portion
Of the project.
of the project.
And as Alderman Zwart kept talking, to basically have the natural mode path replacing, you know, in there.
Can I amend my amendment to send it out for rebid?
Vote on the amendment first.
Have to vote on the amendment.
I just want to make sure this doesn't
Second.
die and that we send it out to bid. Is that the goal here?
I'll withdraw
With-
my second.
No, it still
Okay,
needs,
hang on.
needs a supermajority.
Hang on.
So all we need is 3 people
True.
to vote against it.
Okay.
Lou withdrew his second. Do you
Oh,
want to
he did.
withdraw your motion? He withdrew his
Withdrew my
second.
second.
Are you going to withdraw your motion for the amendment? Well, it dies anyway.
Okay, I'll withdraw my
Okay.
motion.
So now we're back to the original project.
What is the original motion? Is it to accept the low bid submitted by
that's the
Yankee
original.
Contractors for the
Yes.
For the
full
whole
project?
project.
For the
Full
whole
project.
project.
The motion's
Okay.
on the screen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is to approve the project as presented and as planned. Okay, any other comments?
And we do have a motion and a second.
We
to
have a
do
motion
that.
and a second
Okay.
on that. Okay, any other comments? So this would be,
Right.
go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so if we want to go back and have them rebid, we vote it down, all we need is 3 people, and then he understands he's got to go back and try to get a rebid for the 2 parts we want done. And I think that does make the most sense, and it doesn't get us into contract problems on the RFP. Makes a lot of sense.
So if this does get turned down, do we want to approve the project before it goes out for bid? Do we want to approve the layout?
Could that be in this vote?
No. Why don't you take this vote and see where the chips fall and then decide
there.
how you want to direct the park director to go
Agreed.
from here.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Ellis.
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Nay.
Alderman Zwart.
Nay.
Alderman Stray.
Nay.
Alderman Kavieski.
Nay.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Okay, the motion fails.
Fails.
Project fails for now, and now, do we want to have him go back without the south leg?
Yeah.
Basically, that's it, and rebid the project without the south leg.
Has engineering been done already on it?
Well, the engineering for the entire project is completed. So what we have to do is revise the specifications.
Which means basically you
You're-
chop out,
We'll be removing the language to the south, and we'll have to change the boardwalk language because it included all of it originally.
Right.
Um,
So square
we'll-
footage of boardwalk comes down. Square
Absolutely.
footage of boardwalk comes down, right?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So we just have to make sure we go through the full
Right.
document to make sure that it's very clear that we're doing the north and the east-west section, all components included. I would like to add, based on my previous comment, to evaluate the ADA accessibility and connectivity of the existing path, because I think that's important to at least be aware of it. There may be an issue, there may not be, we'll find out. And then, so authorize me to do that, and then I can ask the consultant to revise the inspection service plan, so it'll reduce the number of hours most likely, because it's a smaller trail. I can get that done. So my question would be is, would you like me to wait to send that out? Or because I know what the scope is, should I send it out so it all comes back at the same time?
Send it out.
I think you need to get permission from the homeowners associations to use that property.
Okay, I can do that.
And that's, I mean, if you can't get that, there's no point.
Well,
It would
Well,
still
I
connect.
just don't think we do that part.
Yeah, we just don't do that one part then.
Well, okay, then you got the
I don't
yellow
think we
section and then the
engineered
red
that
section, and
anything.
how
I
do you
don't think
connect
we
the two?
put that part in.
How do we do it now?
Don't you have?
I will
the,
get that clarified.
Don't you have
before
that
that.
paved section right there? Between the red and
I
the
think what
yellow?
you're gonna end up with is the yellow to the red, and then you're not gonna be going out those cul-de-sacs.
Right.
Because it's gonna be private.
Right.
And then you just have to come down, so.
Right,
Mayor-
I agree.
Okay?
That's good.
I want to, real quick, I want to make sure that we have clear, right now, the yellow line that is shown does not include what was removed in the last amendment, right? It's
I'm
the
sorry, I
full
didn't follow
east-
you.
It's the full east-west,
That's what was provided in the original.
right, because the last time we talked about it, there was.
Yeah, no, that's not part of this.
Right.
My understanding is you want this path to go from here and connect to the street on this side, so the entire piece would be part of the next bid.
I agree, but there was,
Correct?
there was some discussion. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page, so we don't go
Yeah,
through.
I was with Derek on cutting out that east-west portion before, then I said, let's put it back in if we're gonna do it all. Now for the red and the yellow, I'm still okay with, if that's
The
what
way
we're
it
doing.
stands
The
right
full
now.
amount.
I just want to make sure.
Other than the path to nowhere, everything else goes somewhere.
I think I'm clear.
It's very simple logic.
Just as a point of order, as a comment, I think it's a mistake to pull out the blue section, because I think this is something that the residents of the city want, and there's a lot of times we don't provide what they want, we do what is required. This is something that they want, it's enjoyable, and I think in the long term, this is gonna cost us more money in the future, so I just think this is a mistake. Yeah, let's move on. Staff reports, strategic plan 2018 report.
Yeah,
Sarah's going to give us a report on the progress of the strategic plan.
right. They're going to pull that up for me. I've got a presentation to walk you through tonight, but as they're pulling that up and giving me the, let's see here. All right, thank you, Ivan. Okay. So, as you are all aware, we adopted our first strategic plan back in July of 2018, so this is our first report to the council. We want to share the first 6 months of progress with you tonight and do some highlights and do a little look ahead to the first quarter of 2019. Our strategic plan is an evolving process, so we hope to continue to make changes to this and utilize this as a tool going forward. So we're just getting started with this, so looking forward to feedback and things as we move through this process. See here. We, as part of the strategic plan, there were 5 major goal areas that the city identified, and just to breeze through those, to provide a safe and secure community, improve and maintain our infrastructure and facilities, focus on our economic development, improve our quality of life assets, and enhance the effectiveness of our city government. So those were our 5 major goal areas. Under each goal, we identified objectives, which are listed there, and then under each objective, we had action items. So this was really meant to be a 5-year outlook for action items under these goal areas. So looking at 2018 to date, under the 5 goal areas, we had 101 action items that we had identified as part of our plan over the next 5 years. So to date, we've completed about 11% of those items. You can see that over in the pie chart. And we have, well over half of those are already in progress. I'm going to walk through each of the different goal areas tonight, so we can look at highlighted projects in each goal area. You're going to see the same format as we walk through each goal area. Just to remind you, I've provided you the future state up in the banner of what we envisioned under each of these areas. And then the action items are listed in the chart. That second column is what I'll be referring to there. So this first one, under safe and secure community, we had 3 projects that we completed. The evaluation of the fire district budgetary requests. Of course, we merged with the Western Lakes Fire District, and we went through the process of the budget approval. But as part of that, we really worked on the process with Western Lakes and how we expect to move forward through the approval processes. So that was something that we took care of in 2018, and now that approval process will just be an annual thing that we do going forward. The second item there is the replacement of wells 1 and 2. Utility department evaluated our triggers for wells 1 and 2, which are our oldest wells in the system, and they're fine, they're working well. But if we would rebuild those today, of course, there's different standards today. So as we continue to build out our infrastructure in the future, when we get wells 7 and 8 online, we can look at retiring these wells in the future. But in the meantime, they're working well and they're meeting our needs. And then this last item I'm going to highlight on this next slide. We did, the utility committee had looked at our lead pipes in our system, in our water system, and came up with a plan for how we want to remove those lead laterals within our system. So we're in compliance with our Wisconsin DNR standards. We do have about a little over 900 utility-owned lead laterals. So as we do our street projects and we replace our infrastructure under our street projects, we'll take care of those utility-owned lead laterals at that time. And then we will work with the homeowners and talk to them about what their options are for their private portion of their lateral and do some additional testing and things. So we did remove lead laterals in Pleasant and Cherry Streets in 2018. The next area is the improve and maintain our infrastructure and facilities. So 4 items here to highlight for you tonight. The public safety facility, of course, we approved the schematic design and project budget that for the public safety facility that's in construction design right now, and plan to bid that in May. And ultimately, the goal is to have construction complete in 2020. The long-term funding plan I'll highlight on the next slide when I get to that. The third item there is the fix the Worthington Railroad crossing. We took care of that in 2019. We just need to do some sidewalk work when in the spring here. And then the Thackeray Trail permitting and design has progressed even further since the end of the year. Of course, we had our DNR public hearing for the wetland permit, and once we get the permit, we can proceed to bidding and moving forward with that project. Yes, and the land acquisition of the triangle. Thank you, Stan. Wanted just to highlight here the item under the infrastructure and facilities is we've been working with the council on our long-term funding plan for our street improvements. Something we hear from the community is to take care of our streets. The city we invest a little over $1 million every year in levy funding to do street maintenance projects. In addition to that, the council looked at an additional investment plan of $1 million in debt funding for streets annually, and that of course impacts the utility infrastructure underneath the streets. So there's additional sewer and water impacts as well. The purpose of this is really to keep up with the pace of the deterioration of our streets by focusing on those things that we can do a resurfacing versus a full reconstruct, because there's significant cost savings to a lesser scope project there. Economic development, there's 5 items I wanted to highlight for you tonight. We are in the process of updating our comprehensive land use plan through 2050. This is going to be a wonderful process for the city to go through. We've had one steering committee meeting to date. We've had community survey. We did a high school student survey, really trying to get public input into this future planning for the city. We've done a number of pop-up events, and I think we've got another one or two scheduled coming up. So this will be an ongoing process throughout 2019. Regarding the Southwest Summit Avenue area, of course, as we are aware, Olympia has been purchased, and the developer is currently undergoing their process to redevelop the hotel into apartments. And they will continue to work on an overall master plan and vision for that greater area as well. So that's something that is in process, but we'll keep working on moving forward. The council, the Tourism Commission and the Protection and Welfare Committee actually looked at this next item, the VRBO policy considerations, and after discussion had decided no changes needed to be made at this time, so this item is put to rest for this period. I'll talk about the tourism website on the next one, next slide, and then the last item there is the murals on the downtown. In the downtown, we completed 3 murals in our downtown area in 2018 with the help of the Tourism Commission. It was a public-private relationship there that made those come to fruition. So here's just a screenshot of our new tourism website. This is a visitor-based website that's really sharing our quality of life activities and events for our tourists and our residents. Visit oconomowoc.com. And then we launched that November 1st, and the community organizations have an opportunity to submit events to be included on our community events calendar. And people that are interested in receiving notifications can sign up through our Notify Me process on the website to get pushed notifications out about events and things. So we're excited to have that underway. Next goal item, we're on number 4. So improve quality of life assets, 3 items here. John had highlighted earlier analyze the library and parks needs assessment results. I'll show that on the next slide, but that'll be a great tool moving forward for planning and prioritizing our library and parks needs. Ask Alderman Mayor listening sessions. Mayor Nold did 2 town hall meetings in 2018 and one more recently in 19. And that is something that he has been holding, and aldermen have been attending as well, and it's been well received by the community. So expect that would continue to happen. And then we implemented Coffee with a Cop and had 2 different sessions where the community could come in and have a conversation with some of our police department force and have a nice dialogue there. This is just the parks needs assessment in the library. Just to highlight here that this study found that the majority of our survey participants said that a high-quality parks, recreation, forestry department, and library are important or very important to their overall quality of life in Oconomowoc. So that is something that we'll continue to focus on as we move forward. And then finally, effectiveness of our city government. A lot of this is behind-the-scenes things that maybe our citizens might not see day-to-day, but help us continue to work more effectively. The first item was just to complete and deploy our strategic plan, so we did that. We're implementing this strategic plan into our training and our onboarding process with new employees to incorporate that into our culture. We've implemented some collaboration systems, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. We've got our new utility billing software that was rolled out, and that created a nicer bill format for our residents with more information and is more effective for our billing staff as well. We implemented our new AV and equipment software here equipment in the council chambers. We are live streaming our council meetings now, and those are also available out on YouTube for your viewing pleasure. And finally, we have prepared our electric rate case, and we've got a public hearing coming up with the PSC in a week on our electric rates. The implementation of the collaboration systems, we implemented our new agenda management systems, really creates an electronic workflow. You have seen a different format of your agendas. we're trying to look for continued efficiencies in our processes. So we'll continue to finish that implementation. We did put together our SharePoint site for the strategic plan tracking that got done in December. So now our next phase is really to work on the reporting and what we can do to enhance that. And we're going to start training on a document management system in the first quarter. All right, so looking ahead to first quarter, there's quite a lot on the docket coming up. We will continue our work on the public safety facility design, and we're going to be evaluating the potential outlot sale at our property on Wisconsin Avenue. Of course, we're working on Thackeray Trail, Valley Road water main bidding and special assessment process. We have our 2019 street projects that we're working on, including the Collins Street parking lot. Staff is working on our wayfinding signage to update that, comprehensive land use plan, Southwoods attachment planning. We have an area that under our border agreement with the now Village of Summit comes into the city automatically at the January 1 of 2020. So we're planning for that attachment so we can communicate with the residents and make that a smooth transition for them. We're evaluating our Village Green enhancements, and a recommendation should be coming forth. Northeast Regional Park Planning, same thing. The Park and Rec Board will be looking at that, making a recommendation up to the council. We're in the process of looking at our market study for our crew position wages, finalizing our agenda management modules, our strategic plan reporting, the document management we talked about. We're also converting our accounting software. Electric rate case approval and implementation. We have an update to our impact fee study that will be coming forward, and defining our outreach events and timing for 2019. So that's the first quarter of things that staff will be working on that were in the strategic plan. There's a couple things that were on the strategic plan but not identified for the first part of 2019, but have shifted up in a priority. The Olympia area redevelopment that I mentioned earlier, of course, that's something we shifted up in priority. And we do have a request from the Village of Lac La Belle for additional sewer recs, so we'll be working on that. And then there's some things that came in the door that weren't on the strategic plan, and so I would like to review these quarterly with you as they come in, and then give you a recommendation as to when staff can work on those. We're working on the Waterview condo project, architectural commission process that we discussed earlier tonight. The Yellow Brick Road concept evaluation, that should be coming forward, I think, at the next meeting for the committee of the whole to consider. Jason had talked about the CUP code updates tonight. We are doing an RFP for our sewer hydraulic capacity. What is our sewer capacity in our different areas? Western Lakes Fire District is working on a fire code update that will come forth for our consideration. We're going to be reviewing our RFP process for professional services, the engineering construction management. That's something that we heard about when we approved our last engineering contract. So the council asked that we look at that, so we'll start diving into that this first quarter. Our right-of-way ordinance, and council at budget time asked us to look at the building inspection services. So probably start looking at that in the second quarter, so we have that in time for budget. So with that, going forward, we'll provide you quarterly updates on the strategic plan. And we're gonna, like I said, we'll keep working on our reporting and hope to have something tangible for the council eventually so that you have something to look at and that we can share with the public as well. And I just want to conclude and share my appreciation for the work on the strategic plan that everyone did this year. I think it's going to be a great tool for us as we move into the future. I want to thank all of our elected leaders for your vision and support through the process. I want to thank our department head team for their leadership in helping make these things become a reality. And then also our frontline employees who are working every day and providing that excellent service to our citizens on the front lines and represent us. So thank you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you all.
Thank you, Sarah. Next item is a presentation. This is the presentation that was given at the DNR public hearing on Thackeray Trail wetland permit. Mark will give the introduction, and then we have a couple of engineers here that will go through the permit application, the information that was given, and if anybody has any questions, we'll take a few questions at the end, okay?
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor said, the presentation you're going to see tonight is the one that was provided for the public hearing on January 28th to the citizens. A couple of opening comments based on some of the things that we'd heard that night. There's a lot of concerns with the existing Thackeray Trail, the pedestrian lack there of pedestrian facilities, stormwater. There was a comment that the citizens in that area don't think we're listening to them. You know, we are. But, you know, that's a different project than what we're talking about here. And it's always been, you know, Public Works and design thought process of determining whether or not Thackeray Trail can extend. And there's two components to that. One is the wetland fill permit, which has to come from the DNR. You know, that's never a guarantee that you will obtain that. And then the other is bringing back construction bids to the Common Council for approval. So once we get through those stages, if everything moves ahead and Thackeray Trail is able to extend, then I would be recommending coming back to council and looking at, you know, how do we design and reconstruct the existing Thackeray Trail. So that's why we're not talking about those items that we've been hearing so much about. I mean, the people along Thackeray Trail have been very good. They speak very well. They have very good thoughts that they provide to us, and we have been listening to them. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that. Tonight we have Maria Keeley and Maureen McBroom from Rupert Milky. They have been the ones putting in all the hours on the permitting and design process for Thackeray Trail. So I will have them come up and do their presentation for you.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you to everyone for listening to us tonight. As Mark said, we are going to be repeating the presentation that was done January 28th as part of our permit process, our application for wetland fill. Part of that requirement was to do a public hearing. We had a lot of amazing feedback. We're not going to be necessarily addressing a lot of the questions or comments from that night, but it certainly is taken into consideration. So I'm Maria Keeley. I'm a project engineer with Rupert Milky.
Maureen McBroom, I'm the environmental coordinator with Rupert Milky.
All right, and we will keep this brief and look forward to questions afterwards. So we are just going to start off generally. I know we're all aware of the project here, so it is located between Silver Lake Street and the existing dead end on Thackeray Trail west of Summit Avenue. And on this figure here, you'll see two different colored areas. So this is in general the street extension area. On the west end, we have this blue portion, and that is the upland area or the non-wetland area. And east of that, we have this yellow portion here, which is approximately 400 feet, and that is our delineated wetland area. Maureen, later on in the presentation, will get into some details about the wetland delineation that was performed for the area. So we'd like to kick it off with our project purpose. And we do see this project as being a huge benefit to the city overall. So first and foremost, we're looking to increase vehicular safety for citywide, for residents throughout the community, and improving traffic flows in surrounding areas of the city. You know, specifically within the Whitman, or excuse me, the Whitman Park neighborhood, as well as west of Silver Lake Street, but for the city as a whole, providing a different east-west connection is something that's been in the city's plan for a long time. Different options have been evaluated, and we do believe this would be a big benefit by decreasing emergency response times throughout the city, by providing a diversity of option for traffic flows for all residents throughout your community. And another big goal of this project is to begin providing multi-use recreational facilities for pedestrians in this area. So I know John spoke earlier, of course, there are multiple plans as far as expanding pedestrian facilities throughout the community. This extension of Thackeray Trail, and you'll see our design in just a moment, does include that. And any future projects within Thackeray Trail would continue to expand on those options. And we are looking at improving stormwater drainage. For just this portion of the project, we're looking at west of Emerson Drive, and we'll get into some of those details. And as Mark mentioned, in the future, another project would include stormwater improvements east of Emerson Drive for the rest of Thackeray Trail. So going over our project summary, we will start on the west end of this map here. So we're at Silver Lake Street at this existing dead end. This is St. Jerome's Parish to the north, and there's these existing stormwater facilities. So we would begin our connection here. I know it's a little hard to see on this figure, but we do have pedestrian facilities expanding along this current portion of Thackeray Trail to this existing sidewalk that goes along Silver Lake Street, as well as up to St. Jerome's Parish. So then moving east, this again is our non-wetland area. So this would just be our typical road extension. And then this dashed line here is where you enter the wetland area. And so this is what our DNR wetland permit is focusing on. And we'll get into the cross section, the typical section of the road in just a moment, but there is an 8-foot wide asphalt path on the north side of the road here. And then as you transition into the wetland area, this turns into a boardwalk section to minimize the disturbance. And again, we'll get into the reasoning for that shortly. You'll see these red sections here are portions of storm sewer. So this is what's handling the flows from north of the road extension, as well as all the impermeable pavement on the road extension itself. So there's a low point right around here, just outside of the wetlands, a high point, and this is all flowing west towards these existing stormwater facilities. I'll get into the details later, but these facilities were sized for the road expansion, which was part of this St. Jerome's construction. So moving east of this wetland area, you'll see this different hatching on this portion of existing Thackeray Trail. This is Emerson Drive right here, so this is the extent of our current project area. And the plan is to replace just the asphalt, the top layer of asphalt on this portion of road. The pavement's in very poor condition, and for this extension for future construction to make sense east of Emerson Drive, we'd like to have a solid transition area into the proposed construction. So a few more details, some of these I've already mentioned. The total project, the extension, is 1,200 linear feet. 400 of those feet are through the wetland area. The proposed design would be a 25-mile-per-hour road. The cross-section that you see on this screen here is very close to the typical residential for a 60-foot right-of-way. We have two 14-foot paved lanes with the 30-inch curb and gutter on either side, so that is the typical residential. What varies a little bit is where we have this asphalt path. Again, on the north side of the road extension, we are proposing a boardwalk through the wetland areas. And then I have a note here about a reduced street cross-section. So that would be reduced from the existing boulevard that's on Thackeray Trail. So this is really wide. It's the 100-foot right-of-way here, and it's two 20-foot lanes. So it's very visible here that you're reducing down to those two 14-foot lanes. And the reason for that, there's multiple reasons. So one is increased safety. So it is naturally going to slow vehicles down if you're going into a reduced cross-section versus that really wide boulevard section. Reduced cost is certainly a factor, and we are absolutely doing our best in designing and bidding the project to stay within the budget that was set forth for the project. And by reducing the amount of pavement, that will certainly help, again, versus the boulevard section on existing Thackeray Trail. And we are looking to minimize wetland disturbance to the greatest extent possible. One reason for that is to stay within the general permit for the Army Corps. We are an individual permit for the DNR as we're above 10,000 square feet. But by staying under a half an acre of disturbance, we are a general permit for the Army Corps. So that makes it a lot easier in general. And then again, you'll see on here that we are providing off-street pedestrian facilities. I'd mentioned that a few times. So we're briefly going to get into some of the site drainage. I know that is a huge concern throughout the Thackeray Trail neighborhood, not just in our portion of the project, but the entire street. And as far as our portion of the project is concerned, We have the roadside swales from existing Thackeray Trail on both the north and south sides that are draining west towards our project area. And the drainage area for our project, or for those swales, is much larger than just the Thackeray Trail neighborhood. So you have the neighborhood east of Summit Avenue, and a large portion that was included in the DOT reconstruction that is draining west through the neighborhood and towards our street extension. One point that we really want to make sure we stress is that we have been evaluating drainage for the project, and the wetlands that are north of our street extension are not fed by the drainage from these swales, from these grass swales in the neighborhood. They're fed in part by areas to the northeast, to the northwest, so that's Oconomowoc High School, and that's St. Jerome's Parish, as well as just being a natural low-lying area. And Maureen will get a little bit more into the wetland details. But the big point that we want to stress to everyone is that we are minimizing the impact that we're gonna have to the wetlands by not restricting the runoff. The runoff in the existing neighborhood is not currently headed there. So we do, in our plan I mentioned, we have proposed culverts, as well as a few minor stream modifications that are going to convey runoff from the existing Thackeray Trail to the shallow stream, which Maureen is gonna get into right now.
All right, so to pick up on the site drainage, and make sure I get the right button, excellent. I want to go a little more into detail about the existing roadside swale situation with the existing Thackeray Trail. So on this top figure here, we are at the dead end of the eastern Thackeray Trail portion. It goes through the Whitman Hills, Whitman Park neighborhoods. The blue shaded area on this exhibit shows the channelized area where stormwater runoff from both the south side of the street here as well as the north side of the street has flowed into the wetlands, and over time they've just eroded away, and we've have these significant channels going through there. So every time it rains now, we have water coming through from, as Maria said, up near the car dealerships, up near State Highway 67 bypass, up near the shopping centers, all through the neighborhoods, and we've got a lot of hard surface every time the snow melts and the rain hits. It's washing down the roadside swales down into these channels. So now we're eroding away, and we've got sediment and other nutrients that are now hitting the channel, which is actually right here at the very end, at the southwest or the lower left portion of the exhibit here. This is the existing channel that then flows to the west and is a tributary to the Oconomowoc River. So there's a lot of erosion going on over time because of the heavy flows coming through here. What we're doing here as part of our project is diverting some of the water that's flowing from off-site or outside of the neighborhood and also collecting in the neighborhood, flowing down those northern channels. We're going to divert that at Emerson Drive through a new culvert, going to the south and going through the southern swales here. That's going to pick up in this newer channel that we're going to create on the new side of the new road. And that's what we see up here on the top exhibit in this red outlined area. So we're going to divert some of that water coming currently through on the north side to the south side, which will help avoid some of the flooding issues we've seen along these driveways in front of the 4 houses on the very west end of Thackeray Trail. In addition to that, there will of course still be stormwater coming through on the north side. Not all of it will be picked up through this culvert. That will then go through a new culvert underneath the new road over here, and that again is also shown on this exhibit to the top here, and be carried out through the tributary to the Oconomowoc River. So the water is still going to pretty much follow the same path. It is not currently feeding the wetland. It is not a source of wetland hydrology that is really spreading out throughout the wetland and providing a source of water for the plants and for the animals that are living in the wetland right now. Really, it's just going through the channels and bypassing the wetland because of erosion and just time and all the development that's happened there. So we're going to continue allowing the water to flow through the stream, but we're hoping to improve the situation down here for at least the homes between Emerson Drive and the new portion of the road. What we're looking at is heavy events. I just wanted to mention that these culverts can be sized to carry that 10-year rain event. The 10-year rain event is kind of that over a 3-inch rainfall. And so traditionally, you're going to see a 3-inch rainfall once every 10 years. But obviously we see that a lot more now. Usually we get at least 1 3-inch rainfall every summer. So that's where we end up with these problems of the water coming down so fast and so much coming off those hard surfaces that we have ponding down here in front of these homes here. And that's where we have some small improvements happening through this project to help some of the drainage issues here. So, and as Maria said, this is not addressing the drainage issues from Summit Avenue through to Emerson. This is our portion of the project right here. What we do here could be what happens later on in a future project, but hopefully it's going to help right away this year. Move on. As Maria mentioned, the west end of the project does have existing stormwater ponds. So those stormwater ponds were built 10, 15 years ago. They were sized not only for the St. Jerome's Parish and for the road extension that is hooked onto Silver Lake Street that exists right now, but they're also sized for a boulevard section. So they're basically oversized for what's currently there, which is not a road. They're also going to be oversized for the road when it goes in because we do have a smaller cross-section being proposed. So I want to hit the delineated wetlands for a moment. Part of the reason that we did the presentation, the whole reason we did the presentation, is because it was a public hearing for the wetland individual permit from the DNR. So we want to talk a little bit about what is a regulated wetland and what's not a regulated wetland. In this exhibit, we talk about WDNR exempt wetlands. So anything in blue, and we look at the dark blue areas over here. You have to show the 2 stormwater ponds. We've got the channel adjacent to the tributary for the Oconomowoc River that goes up this way and then out to the west. We also have the large wetland complex here, which is a little over 3 acres. And then along the road, we also have some light blue areas, just lines right alongside of the road. These areas in the light blue or dark blue were all delineated and shown to be wetlands by Sewer PAC based on hydrology, based on soils, and based on the plants. So that's an infield delineation. And what we did was we looked at that, we evaluated it, worked with DNR and said which ones would be a regulated wetland versus which ones are man-made wetlands, and were constructed basically as site drainage. So DNR has agreed that the dark blue wetlands are areas that are regulated as wetlands at this point in time. Based on current rules and current laws, the light blue areas, so basically starting at, we're showing about Lowell Drive here, and then coming down on both the south side of the road and then the north side of the road. The light blue are not considered to be regulated wetlands by DNR, so they are considered to be part of the storm sewer system. Oh, and one more thing about that. As part of the storm sewer system, they are stormwater ditches or swales. They are designed to carry a certain amount of water, and they're designed to be maintained on a regular basis. They may show signs of having cattails even, or some kind of wetland plants coming out of them. It's because we're sending water purposely towards these features. And so that kind of makes a difference between whether it's a regulated wetland or not a regular wetland. It's going to look like a wetland out to any of us as we drive by. But what is the purpose and why was it created? Why is it located in this place, and how is it being used? As part of the storm sewer system, those heavy rains that come through, whether it's over that 3 inches or that 10-year event, or whether it's our 100-year events that happen more than 100 years, that is designed to come out of the swales and to go down the road. So usually the road is the overflow situation for stormwater runoff to go. And I think that's what we've seen some evidence of through some of the comments we've gotten from the public. So one of the pieces of the wetland permit through the DNR is wetland mitigation. So whenever there's a significant area of wetlands that are being filled for whatever the purpose is, whether it's a trail or a building or a parking lot or a road, et cetera, there is a requirement to mitigate and compensate for that wetland loss. So there are 3 different options the DNR offers for that. The Wetland Mitigation Bank option is the first one, and that consists of private businesses that own pieces of property, and a potential wetland permittee through the DNR can purchase a wetland credit through the mitigation bank and basically pay the mitigation bank to restore a portion of that property. They then, in turn, the mitigation bank owners tell the DNR, yes, we've completed this transaction, the permit applicant has paid for this X amount of wetlands, and yes, we agree that that wetland permit should be issued. and then DNR will go ahead and issue that permit. A similar program is the Wetland in lieu fee program, and the difference there is that there's a dollar amount that is paid for X amount of wetlands to DNR rather than to a private business owner, and that gets used to fund the Wisconsin Wetland Conservation Trust, which is a somewhat new grant program that different entities can apply to get monies to restore wetlands at different places around the state. The third option would be on-site mitigation. On-site mitigation would be obviously mitigating some portion of area to be a new wetland on-site nearby where the actual area is being filled. That's not a popular option because the success of creating a new wetland like that is somewhat controversial. I don't think there's real good agreement on how to make that type of project successful. At the same time, it's very difficult. It's very difficult on the owner to come up with a plan, a restoration plan, a vegetation plan, invasives management plans, and to keep this going for a number of years, 10, 15 years or more. So the first two options are usually what we're working with, and that's what we're doing right now is we're waiting for information from DNR as to which is the better of the two options to complete our mitigation requirement. As Maria said, we have just under a ½ acre of wetland disturbance that we'll be doing mitigation for. So based on the way that program works, we'll have to probably do a little bit more of that. So probably looking at about a 3/4 of an acre or a little bit less than that to mitigate. And that is pretty much a quick run through of the presentation that we did last Monday night. At that presentation, we basically did our presentation and then we sat down because the purpose of the public hearing is not to do a question and answer session. The purpose at that point was for the public to come up and provide information to DNR that would help the DNR staff make a decision on whether to approve the permit application or not. However, we would love to entertain your questions tonight. So if anyone here has any questions or thoughts they'd like some feedback from us on, we're here to answer your questions.
So does anybody have any questions? Matt?
Yeah, I have a couple real quick. Why are we doing, if we're already paving through the wetland, why do a boardwalk and incur that expense for that area? I mean, why not just put another little paved section there? What's the purpose of that? Who cares at that point if you're already disturbing the wetland?
That's a great question. So that goes back to the ½ an acre, and putting in a paved trail there would push us over that ½ acre. We are just under the square foot of disturbance. I think approximately 200 square feet under.
What's the boardwalk cost then? Is the boardwalk cost significant? I mean, we already heard in our other project today, the boardwalk costs over wetlands are pretty expensive.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is a huge cost. Is it going to be more than the road itself?
No, certainly not, or we would not expect that. So based on previous bids, we're looking at 400 linear feet. I don't want to throw any numbers out tonight because I don't.
What the hell, why not?
Because you're going to hold it to it then.
I was going to say, I don't want to be held to anything.
Don't tell them anything.
We don't hold nobody against anything.
But what we're certainly doing is looking at different manufacturers, different types of boardwalks, things that can lower that cost. So looking at the most cost-effective way possible to bid out the boardwalk section.
And we use, we're going to use like that plastic materials. We're not using actually wood, are we? We don't use wood in these things.
We actually have not completed that part of the specification. That's two different options, would be a timber boardwalk or, like you said, some type of plastic boardwalk section.
Yeah.
In the spec, we are leaving it as, I'll say, as open as possible, again, to make the bids competitive.
And then I had a question about what kind of fee are we typically seeing if we have to go with the in lieu mitigation program? I mean, what kind of fees do you see that are charged for a project like this size? Hundreds of thousands of dollars to the state?
No, you know what? I did one about a year ago near Madison that had about little under a ½ acre of mitigation. So we were maybe at about a 1/3 acre of actual fill. And that one was somewhere around $35,000 or $45,000 for about a ½ acre credit. So we're a little bit more than a ½ acre credit. That is a private industry, it's private business, so the dollars do rise and fall. So there's, it's not a flat rate. In fact, those numbers can change during the year. It really depends on what each mitigation bank is charging. So it's not a standard rate.
You're saying the government's charged more than the private businesses or vice versa?
There's no correlation saying that it has to be one way or the other. The private banks can charge what they want for the mitigation credits. The in lieu fee program, which is the one that funds that grant program, that is usually at a standard rate for a set amount of time. I don't know what it is right now because we haven't really worked with that program in the past few years.
Okay.
It's similar to the mitigation banks, are going to be in the same ballpark, but again, the private businesses can charge what they want, really.
Okay. For fun, I'll ask you more questions about that later. Where they set those up and where they get built, but you don't have to answer that
The
now.
mitigation banks?
Yeah, don't answer that now.
There's information on the DNR website, too.
Okay, that's where I'll go.
If you don't mind, I'd just like to add something to what Maria answered about the boardwalk.
Sure.
One other aspect about why we would do a boardwalk is that the DNR does not necessarily issue permits for fill in the wetland for sidewalks. So the standard option is to look at the alternative putting a boardwalk in. So in our wetland permit process, where you need to do an alternatives analysis and show why we need to do this and why X number of feet need to be filled, we would have to show why a paved sidewalk have to go in and why a boardwalk could not. So in this case, they're looking at the fact that a boardwalk from a permitting perspective makes sense.
Okay. Thanks.
I think it would actually look better too in the wetland area. Give it more rustic look. Lou?
Couple questions. So with that boardwalk, is there a guardrail along the road to protect the boardwalk and those on the boardwalk?
Swamp Monster's not going to come out and grab you, Lou.
You don't know.
So typically we have like a type of a curb, so like a raised ledge essentially on either side. It's really up to our discretion where we include the railings versus the curb. So that's a discussion we'll have with the city on, you know, how far off the ground, depending, do we want a railing? In this case, we're gonna be very close to the existing ground. So currently at this point, I wouldn't be recommending a railing, just the curb, but that's certainly a discussion we can have with the city.
Just one of the reasons is we're right next to a school. There's a lot of kids in the neighborhood, and safety's been brought up more than once. The other question I have is in regards to the current Thackeray Trail that is east of Emerson. There is no sidewalk. It's culvert, and I would imagine the way that water flows down would change if that becomes sidewalk. Potentially, is there an impact of then how much water would or could accumulate down the road, and how that how the pipes would need to be sized in order to handle that? That would be an unknown until that occurs?
I was gonna say I don't wanna speculate because I don't know what the proposed cross-section would look like east of Emerson Drive, or for that portion between Emerson and our new street extension. I know the city's looked at a lot of different options in the past as far as typical storm sewers, modified ditches, looking at putting in bioretention. There's a million different options we could look at, so that's hard to say. I know one goal of the city with that future project is to remediate the stormwater issues. So there certainly wouldn't be, I wouldn't think, more stormwater headed through the culverts.
No, I think part of what Mark said too, that'll be done once we determine if the permit's gonna be issued, of how that cross-section is gonna look going back. You know, where do we put the sidewalks? We all know there has to be sidewalks or a path of some sort for residents to use. So how that's gonna look, it's undetermined yet.
So would that be determined before the sizing and construction of the area that we're talking about occurs?
It would not.
No, I mean, you're talking about the existing part?
No, what I understand is that the water diversion down in the wetlands goes north-south, right?
So the stormwater runoff right now comes from, you know, the Summit Avenue and Thackeray Trail intersection, a lot of hard surfaces around there.
Okay.
And it comes primarily down the the roadside ditches on the north side of Thackeray Trail.
Right.
And currently it flows through and into this channel here and gets picked up and runs south or along the southern border here between the St. Jerome's area and the golf course, and runs through the ditch and then goes out towards the Oconomowoc River. What we're proposing is taking this existing stormwater runoff, and we're not doing any changes to the amount of runoff coming through the existing Thackeray Trail. We're not doing anything to the site drainage patterns or anything until it gets to Emerson Drive here. And we're going to intercept some of that water and take it to the south, and then run it through a stormwater roadside ditch right down here on the south side of the existing Thackeray Trail, and then it'll get picked up by that tributary to the Oconomowoc River there. So the only portion of the site drainage we're changing as part of this project is the area between Emerson Drive and the end of the dead-end road right now, where the new road will connect in.
Based on current conditions, not based on potential conditions that'll occur with addressing Thackeray Trail east of that area, which is unknown at this time.
Correct, yeah. So according to existing conditions, and one of the main goals of a future project would be to improve those conditions. So you could almost look at it as what we have here, there's a safety factor for anything that would be built in the future, because it is for existing conditions which are poor.
I have some questions along those lines, because I think if you put storm sewer and sidewalk to the east of Emerson, you may change the conditions to make them worse for picking up the water. I mean, I don't know, but we haven't thought about that. My problem is I want to make sure that we plan to put the sidewalks in and the street repairs like we promised that neighborhood if this goes through.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that we've engineered it so that we don't have to redo something completely because we're going to change upstream something. I want it all. I kind of think we should be considering that stormwater before we go and do this.
Well, I can see, and then maybe I'm just talking out of turn here, but I can see the portion from where the extension ends and Emerson as possibly temporary. Because all we're doing
well,
there
it's definitely temporary. It's a mill and overlay, which
well, I know,
is
but all
kind
we're
of
doing is putting a couple of culverts in.
Right.
So I would say anything from there, you know, that area there is up for redesign as the whole thing. From the new part west, that's not gonna change. So everything to the east could change. So however that does pan out, it doesn't really matter what we do to the west because we're really not putting anything into the west. All we're doing is putting the road in and a culvert underneath it. That could all change.
I just hate to see us I see, because we're really not doing anything here.
We're not doing anything on the west.
I'm just
It's
worried that
going
we're
down
gonna
the
have
west
to make room for increased capacity by putting pipe in instead of ditches, because it's gonna move faster.
Pipe where?
Where the ditches are now. I don't know.
Where the ditch is on the existing Thackeray Trail.
Yes.
Yeah, and that'll be part of the new design.
Just want to make sure that
Sure.
we don't shoot ourselves in the foot by doing something ahead of time and not prepare for the long term is
But
all.
there's only one thing that can be done on the west end. I mean, to go through the wetlands, there's not a whole lot that can change there.
Okay.
It's just one road that's going through, and then everything goes, the natural ditch that's there, that's been there forever. That's gonna stay there, so all we're doing is getting the water to that point. Everything east of that point is gonna have to be reevaluated so that we decide, are we gonna do a boulevard again, or are we gonna do a regular cross-section street? How are we gonna do sidewalks? Are we gonna do storm drains? Are we gonna keep ditches? That'll have to be evaluated and designed at one point.
I'm just nervous about moving forward with something without thinking of all the aspects ahead of time.
And they are thinking about all the aspects, but like I said, the only thing with the extension is going through the wetlands and adding that, whatever, 800 feet of pavement, and that's not gonna change, because there's nothing really that goes there. Lou?
Sorry.
How long is a DNR permit good for?
I believe it's 5
I
years.
believe it's 5. I was just trying to confer with my partner here.
Yeah.
I believe it's a 5-year permit.
Okay. So it's not like if it's issued, we have to do construction there within a year based on the conditions that it was evaluated on. You get 5 years to implement the plan that was proposed.
It is an individual permit, so there is some customization for this one. It's not a general permit. The Army Corps permit should be a 5-year permit. The Wisconsin DNR permit should be a 5-year permit, but we want to make sure that it gets written that way. In the past, there are some permits that have been written for 3 years, for example. So it should be 5 years, and that's something we'll be working with DNR on.
Derek, you have something else?
Just the house that's gonna have more water in it, on the corner of Emerson and Thackeray Trail on the south corner.
Mhm.
We're not gonna have any issues with too much water there that,
Well, speaking with one of the residents tonight, they said they don't even have a sump pump in any of their houses. With all the rain that we've had and all the water that's flowing, they don't have sump pumps. So there's no water issues there now.
well, hopefully there won't be any after we put the
Yeah.
pipe in.
I mean, and that's surprising to me because I'm higher than that and I have my sump pump running all the time.
And we are sizing the culverts appropriately, so we're looking at bringing all that drainage from the north side, as well as we looked at the drainage area to the south, what's existing going through those culverts. And we are upsizing their culvert appropriately, as well as the one culvert to the west at that park service entrance.
One
Sorry.
more, go ahead.
Is all the work being done in the right of way, so we don't need any, temporary easements or anything like
They
that?
have 100-foot right away.
Correct,
Okay,
yep.
but just asking the question.
Yeah, we have 100-foot right away. Pat?
Real quick one, the upsizing culverts, does that mean digging them deeper
Replacing them.
with
So
concrete?
upsizing, replacing them with a larger size culvert.
I see.
It's an oval, so it doesn't go deeper, it just goes wider. Any other questions?
I just got a comment. Thank you for doing your show here, but can you, the mayor lives right across the street from St. Jerome's there. Can you direct more water to his backyard or
You know how much
something?
I almost have as much as you do.
Yeah, thanks. I
I'll do my
deserve that
best.
one.
Thank you for coming out on this beautiful night
Yeah,
and
one more question,
giving
I'm
this
sorry.
presentation. I know that everybody, well, some of the aldermen were there to see the presentation, but I appreciate you coming back for this. One more question from Lou?
Is there any benefit to doing this as phase one in the project as opposed to phase two and doing east of Emerson as phase one?
Certainly. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You know, when we're looking at this, we have always looked at this as being the first phase. That's part of the reason why we're extending up to Emerson, looking to construct this new part. And then when we do have the project and bid out, and we're doing the major reconstruction of the existing Thackeray Trail, this would allow access from within the subdivision to be able to come around and use this as an access point as we dig up through the middle. If we pick the option that uses like 48-inch storm sewer, that's a fairly long project, and it'll take up the entire street, so we have to find ways of moving the traffic through there. This would be that route to do that.
This gives them an alternate entrance from the west. They have one to the east still with the Lexington or whatever street that is. The second part of Mark's presentation is, and I asked him to put this together, is questions came up as why are we doing this and have we done it before? Well, this is a history of street extensions as the city grew over the years from the city that it was back in the 50s to where it is today with the annexation of properties from the towns and the villages and things like that. So, and connections, there's a lot of places that we've had extensions and a lot of places where we are proposing extensions.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll walk through this really quickly. It'll only take me about an hour. I know everybody's looking to get out of here. Starting with the north end of the city, I'll explain the colors and then we'll just scroll down through, and if you have any question, I'll be more than happy to come back and I'll highlight a couple of the things. So in the spots where you see the little black dots, those are streets at dead end right now, and potentially, so when a development comes along next to them or extends from them, those streets will be extended. All of the areas that you see in this reddish pinkish color are connections that have been made. So, you know, take the Northeast region area. As we know, we've came up through here and came out and tied into Highway P, extended Creekside Drive, which made, this is through street, that's the apartments in the Vanguard area. Here's the area that, you know, a lot of conversation already tonight, but quite frankly, Hummingbird tied in on Juniper, and this now comes over. So this created an alternate avenue, an option for people moving through the area. Rose Street tied into Lakewood Estates subdivision, which also tied into streets in the town, Valley Road and Sunset. You know, one of the projects we're going to be talking about is the North Lapham Street Bridge. You know, that is an area, it's connected through there right now, but, you know, obviously it's something we're going to talk about. Alderman Stray's very aware of what's going on out by his house, where we're now going to make a connection in the Capitol and tie back into Happy Hollow. I was waiting for a comment, Alderman Stray.
Still floods up there that area.
Yeah.
Not so happy anymore.
Not that long ago, we tied in Shady Lane, Oconomowoc Square came around, made the connection here as we worked down out in Hickorywood Farm. So Riverline subdivision went in first. Riverline came in. We have a connection there to move the traffic through. Here's some of those little black dots that I talked about, streets that, this ends at the existing farm. Once that were to ever fill in, these streets would come through and connect. Oconomowoc Parkway, this extended when Jim Seatman was looking at Arrowwood and the school went in. Here's the connection just south of the mayor's house that tied in Silver Lake Trails, Lake Ridge, and Riverwood Trails subdivision. The green that we saw, and I'm sorry I messed it up on Lake Bluff Drive, but that's planned future connections. So we have Thackeray Trail here and Oconomowoc Parkway here. Here's some area within the Olympia area that is now under discussion. Quite a while ago, St. Andrews actually made the connection from Valley Road up to Oconomowoc Parkway. And as we continue to come down and move over just a little bit, Old Schoolhouse Road that went in when they were talking the development out at Paps Farms as an alternate for the fire station that's set up there. Obviously the Paps Farms Boulevard, which was constructed under the term Southeast Arterial, that made the connection down the Highway P to bring the traffic up. And Alderman Rozak knows about, the Peanut Park area, which now will have a street on each side of that tying off into a development taking place in the Village of Summit called Lake Country Village. So those are the things, but so as you can see, a lot of these connections happen as subdivision phases. They attach and move forward from where they're at, or we get abutting subdivisions next to each other. We're able to tie those streets together. So
thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark? Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So moving on, reports and comments from the mayor. The only thing I have is next Thursday morning, there will be the Chamber of Commerce breakfast and the State of the City address. I believe it's 8:30, if I recall right. So anybody wants to know what's going on, and if anybody else would like to see that presentation in the future, we put it on the website, so it'll be available for anybody to look at. Reports and comments from Alderman? Seeing none, we need a motion.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank Mark for putting together the street summary project. The information I asked for a couple months ago came back, and you guys were all emailed it, and I'd appreciate it if you guys take a look at it. I'm not going to go through the numbers tonight, but I did talk to the mayor, Matt and I did, and we may be discussing this at another meeting. So just take a look at it. First page has most of the information on their engineering summary. And I also think this maybe should be included in our RFP discussions.
Yeah, because I remember when we put it for the strategic plan, the RFP discussions, and you also had yours on there for the building inspection.
Yep, I just think this might be
I think they're both
incorporated into that.
I think
but
they're
I
both-
really want you guys to take a look at this. Don't just ignore it. 'Cause
I think
there's
they're
some
both good
numbers in there.
discussion points. Anything else?
Yeah, that was my comment too. I met with the mayor today about, I think that's important to look at, but we talked about the building inspection stuff, and I see that it's already on the strategic plan, so that's great. I appreciate that. It's something I think we can hopefully address this year and either get some good information on it or try to get some resolution of that and maybe bring more money to the city.
So we'll hopefully evaluate that and come up with a solution.
Cool, thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.